Today we'll be covering the top 10 functions. The first thing that we'll discuss are aggregates. Next, we'll cover changing things into different cases, uppercase and lowercase. After that, we'll go into how to handle null results and being able to select different options based on that result. After that, we'll talk about some functions that handle strings. Then we'll discuss the replace function. The next two groups of functions revolve around date values. After that, we'll talk about trim and cast. And then I have a mystery function at the very end that you should be excited about. Let's start with aggregations. Some common aggregations are sum, average, min, max, and then we have some count functions. Count and count distinct. All of these aggregations accept one parameter. So that parameter will generally be the field that you want to evaluate. For sum and average, it's important that you pass in an integer variable or a float so that it can evaluate the sum or the average. Min and max will take string values as well. The min and the max will return the value that you would normally see in either ascending or descending order relative to the min or the max. The min would return the first value in ascending order and the max would return the first value in descending order. And then we'll discuss the two count functions. Count again accepts a parameter as one of the fields, so it'll count the number of non-null records where that field exists. Count distinct will actually count the unique results in that field for the records. So these functions may look something like this. Let's take a look at the results. Count and count distinct will return different values because count distinct is only counting the unique values in that field, and count is counting all of the non-null records in that field. Sum will return the total value for that column, while average will give you the average value for that column. Min and max will return what you would normally see as the first value in either ascending or descending order relative to whether you're looking for the min or the max. Next, let's discuss upper and lower. So these two functions are very important in order to keep consistency in how values are shown in your data warehouse. In some cases, you'll have data that's returned to you that the case is all over the place. Some records may show a name in uppercase, some may show lowercase, some may have improper case values within the words because you're dealing with user entry a lot of time. So you could use upper or lowercase in order to make everything consistent. You also have proper case in Snowflake. However, in SQL Server and some of the other databases, you don't have that option. Next, let's discuss the two functions that handle nulls. So let's start with ISNULL. This function accepts two parameters. Again, normally the field which you want to evaluate, and then what you would like to show up when the field is null. You may be evaluating middle names, where some people do have middle names and some people don't. So in those cases, you may want to return a NA to show that it's not available so that you're not just returning null values. So ISNULL in that case would look like this. You would have ISNULL, your beginning parentheses, the name of your field, and then finally your NA within apostrophes. Next, let's look at COALESCE. So COALESCE accepts innumerable parameters. You could put as many fields as you want in here. Basically, it's going to evaluate each of those fields until it hits a non-null value. You may start with your delivered date, move to your sent date, and then finally your created date. It'll evaluate your delivered date. If that one's null and not populated yet, it will move to the sent date. If that one is null, then it will move to your created date. And whichever one of those it first finds is what it will populate in that field. All right, let's talk about some text handlers. So we have left, right, and substring. The left and right values accept two parameters. You have your field parameter, and then you have your number parameter to show how many characters you'd like to include from the left or the right of the string. The third option, substring, accepts three parameters. You have the field that you want to evaluate, the number representing the number of characters from the left that you'd like to start your substring at, and then finally the number of characters that you'd like to include from that point. So let's take a look at an example. We're going to do the left, right, and substring all in one query so that you could see how it breaks up this word. So you'll see that the left took the left 4 characters, the right took the right 2 characters, again because we used 2 as the number of characters that we'd like to include from the right, and then substring has the remaining inner characters. What are some real-world examples that you could think of for the functions that we'd covered already? We've already been through half of these, so I bet that you could think of plenty. Stay tuned to the very end, and we're going to uncover an advanced solution for this substring function that we just went over. Can you guess what replace does? You guessed it. It replaces a string with another string. Replace takes 3 parameters. So replace accepts the parameter for your field that you're evaluating. The second parameter is the characters that it's looking for to replace. And the third parameter is what it's going to replace with. One real-world example that I've used recently is I had an ID that included a dash in it that I needed to remove. Replace works well for that. So you could say replace your ID field, whatever your name of your ID field is, comma, and then put your dash within your apostrophes. And then finally, I just used the empty string, beginning and ending apostrophes, to indicate that I don't want to replace it with anything. One thing to mention when you're dealing with replace is that it will only replace the first occurrence of what you're looking for. If there are potentially multiples within the string that you'd like to remove, then you'll have to stack this function multiple times. Let's move on to some date functions. We're going to discuss getDate and getUTCdate. These 2 functions return a date and time value based on what you're asking for. So getUTCdate exclusively returns the UTC value of whatever now is. GetDate returns the date and time value of whatever the setting that the server is on. So if your server is set to Eastern time, then it will return the date and time string for Eastern time. Data engineers use the getDate and getUTCdate fairly often. These are primarily going to be used in order to stamp your data movement with whatever the current date and time is of the actual movement that occurred. So for example, when you're performing ETL, you're going to stamp those records with whatever the current date and time is. Now we have a couple of more date functions we're going to go over. We have dateDiff first. DateDiff accepts 3 parameters. It accepts the interval in which you want to evaluate time. So either day, month, year, something along those lines. Then it accepts the start date and the end date that you want to evaluate. So if you want to know how long it took from the time that a transaction occurred until the time that the customer actually received their delivery, then you could do a dateDiff of your created date and your delivered date and find the number of days in between. That would be a good example for a dateDiff. DateAdd, on the other hand, would be something that you're adding or subtracting time from a given date. So again, dateAdd also takes 3 parameters. It accepts the interval, day, month, year, your interval count, plus or minus whatever number of days, months, or years that you want to add or subtract from the original date. And then the third parameter that you're going to pass in is actually the field name for the date that you want to start with. Let's look at an example. In this case, we're going to take dateDiff and we're going to use getDate as our beginning date. And we're going to say day, comma, getDate, getDate plus 5. Now, for our dateAdd, we're going to say month, comma, minus 5, comma, getDate. And what this is going to do is it's going to subtract 5 months from today's date. All right, we have 2 more functions, and then we have the surprise function, and then the advanced substring example. All right, our next one is trim. Not as exciting as the last couple that we've gone through, but still important to know. So, there used to be ltrim and rtrim, and what those 3 functions, trim, ltrim, and rtrim do is removes the leading and trailing spaces from a field. So sometimes you'll import data, especially from some raw data, that may have some trailing or leading spaces. When this occurs, it can cause problems in your data warehouse. You don't want to store all those extra spaces, and when you're doing lookups to other fields, then it can confuse a lot of things. So you want to trim those fields. So you're going to use ltrim to remove all the spaces that you may have that are leading from the left. And then you're going to use rtrim to remove any spaces that may be out past the right side of your string. It's important to know here that neither the ltrim, the rtrim, nor the trim will exclude any spaces from the middle of your string. Finally, trim will remove the spaces from both sides of your field. All right, moving right along. Cast. Cast, again, is very important to a data engineer. You use cast in order to change your data type. A lot of times, you're going to pull raw data in as string values and put them into a staging table. And when this occurs, a lot of times you're going to need to change those values. So something that I use often is to cast a datetime field into an actual datetime data type. There's no comma in the different parameters within cast. You're going to say cast, your beginning parentheses, the name of the field that you'd like to cast, and then you're going to say as, and then the name of the data type. So for instance, you might say cast created date as datetime. And that will return the same created date as a datetime field, so that if you're pushing that data from staging into your foundation or your production tables, then it goes in as the correct data type and the correct format. In the comments below, let's start a discussion about what you do with some of these functions and how you would use them in real life as you're going through your career. If there is a function that I haven't covered, then put it in the comments below, and I'll give you a shout out in one of our future videos and go over your function. Now for the surprise, we're going to talk about a rank function. A rank function is a type of windowing function. So the syntax for rank is rank, beginning parentheses and end parentheses, partition by, beginning parentheses, a comma separated list of fields that you'd like to group your ranking as. For instance, you might want to group an employee table by an employee ID, and then you're going to say order by. So, for instance, you may have duplicates of an employee. For instance, they may change their last name because of a divorce or a marriage. So, you'll want to rank that and return whatever the last value is. Finally, you'll use a order by, and then put possibly a updated on or created on field for your order by, and do that in descending order so that it will rank number one, whatever the record is that you actually want to keep. So you could use rank that way, and then in conjunction with your where clause, and only return the records where that rank is 1. All right, so finally, the advanced substring. There's one more function that I'm going to cover to use with substring that will take substring from something that's kind of plain Jane into something that's a little bit more dynamic and versatile. That function is char_index in SQL Server. And these functions accept two parameters, the first one being this string that you'd like to look for, and the second one being this name of the field that you'd like to evaluate. So again, you'll use substring, which will take 3 parameters. But in this case, in the second parameter, instead of putting in the actual number where we'd like to start, we're going to use char_index, the value of the string that we're looking to find and replace, the string that we're looking to find to begin with, comma, and then the name of the field, and then you're going to end your parentheses. What this does is, for instance, going back to the example I used earlier where we're using replace to replace a dash, you might only want the characters to the right of the dash, for example. So we'll use character index to find the location of the dash within that field. And then finally, for the final parameter, we're actually going to do something a little bit advanced as well. And we're going to use the function len, which returns the number of characters within that field, and we're going to subtract it from the character index. And what that will do is take the original length of the field, subtract it from where it located the character, and return a numeric value representing the remaining characters that are in that string. So in this case, because those characters can be in a variable position, then this resolves that issue where you don't know exactly where those characters are going to be at and need to return a substring. All right, I hope you learned something today and that you enjoyed the video. Again, if you did, please like and subscribe. Share with the community below in the comments what you learned and anything that you'd like to learn in the future about data engineering or SQL tutorials. This is Chris Gamble. You've had fun with data.